Welcome back. Did you find the two videos that had just a little boo-boos in them? Yeah, one of them was the vocal instructor. I thought it was a great video, but when it was supposed to be talking about conscious competence, twice he called it conscious incompetence. And then if you notice on the one other video, the video with the 4 boxes, when you got to the unconscious competence, it was labeled incompetent. No, it was labeled inconscious competence. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little scavenger hunt of boo-boos. You know, there were only a couple in there, but really gained the value of hearing different people talk about the same concept. If you will, spaced repetition, hearing it over and over again, building your understanding and your knowledge of how you go through the 4 levels of learning. Now, the reason I asked you to do that and go through the spaced repetition, the reason why we share and learn about the 4 levels of learning is our next tool, our next concept that I want you to understand can help us accelerate through that, from that point of awareness to the point of mastery, or the point of awareness to, in this case, maybe the point of attainment of a major goal. It's called the 7-step process. Now, I learned about the 7-step process when I joined the company of American Woodmark. Bill Brandt was the chairman of the board at the time, and Bill had been the founder of American Woodmark. Now, I've got to tell you, I've got a huge respect for Bill Brandt. Bill actually, in the development and the formation of American Woodmark, actually exercised one of the first leverage buyouts in the late 70s, early 1980s. Bill was a great thinker. I mean, that's how he came up with the whole leverage buyout strategy in order to move American Woodmark into an independent company. But one of the key principles was the 7-step process. And as I was going through the interview process with American Woodmark, I kept hearing about this 7-step process, and I wanted to learn and understand more about it. Let me share it with you. We start the process by creating a vision. Now, in order to do that, you want to start by slowing down your thinking just a little bit. Now, it can also be applied to a smaller, if you will, vision, and some people just call that a goal. But let's call it, we create a vision. You ask yourself, what do I want? What am I trying to achieve? At this point, we want to suspend judgment. We don't want to be influenced by other people's expectations. What's important is what we want to achieve. We also want to disregard at this point what others or what even we may believe is possible. But we want to start with just a pure blank piece of paper and form a picture and then clarify that picture in our mind. You need to let your vision come alive. Let it get to the point that you feel it, and you break down extremely ambitious visions into a series of manageable subvisions. Later in this whole program, you'll learn that those are called chief aims. And one of the keys at this point, using the 7-step process, is to make sure that you believe in the vision, that you believe it can be achieved. It may be huge, it may be really hard to achieve, but you believe you can achieve it. The second step of the process is to understand your current reality. Again, slow down your thinking. You got to figure out what is the relevant data in understanding where you're at today. Be aware of your own biases. You've got to separate fact from opinion. You know, I might think I'm a great putter on the golf course, but the fact may lie is that I'm not a great putter. I may only be an average putter. And so that may create an opportunity to improve. As you look at the different data points that you take, look for patterns in the data and understand how key elements of the data that you've collected on your current reality interrelate. Seek the truth. Don't just assume you know it. Okay, now you've created your vision and you understand your current reality. Both of these are really, really important. Let me explain how I came to understand that. See, as I was interviewing with Bill's company, I didn't understand the full 7-step process, but I did very quickly come to understand that you had to understand where you wanted to go, and you had to define your current reality. When I went back to the company I was working for, working on the operating committee, and we were working on the strategy and tactics for the next few years, what became real clear to me is we all agreed upon where we wanted to get to. We all agreed on the vision that we were trying to create for that company. But it dawned on me as we were sitting there in those meeting rooms talking about tactics and strategies, we never slowed down long enough to make sure that we were all on the same page of what the current reality for that company was. And see, the same thing can happen for us, for individuals, as we're wanting to seek our vision. If we don't take the time to really gather the data, to really understand, to get the facts, then we may take the wrong actions. See, there's a certain tension that's created between our vision and our current reality. The difference between what we desire in our vision and what we have in our current reality creates a tension within us. And the right amount of tension is important to have. If there is no tension, if our vision and our current reality are too close together, the reality of what we desire and what we have, if there's no distance, if there's no tension, what we have is complacency and we won't move forward. So we want to have the right amount of tension between that. Now, how do you relieve that tension? That's the third step of the process. Let's talk about that. The third step of the process is to take action. We start that by generating possible actions. And there are several different problem-solving processes that might help us, but it's always good to ideate a lot of actions and then focus down on some and make a decision on which actions to take. Ask yourself, do these actions address all of the discrepancies between the current reality and the vision I'm trying to get? What I'm talking about is, does it start bridging the gap? Does it start relieving the tension by eliminating the discrepancies, the differences between what you have and what you desire? Then you prioritize the different action sets, including setting dates for completion. Take responsibility for the achievement of each of these action steps. And then it's time to move on to step number 4, measure performance. When we measure performance, we track whether the action steps are successfully completed on time, and secondly, are they moving us towards our desired result? See, we may have had a great action plan laid out, but if we don't do it on time, that pushes our achievement of the outcome out. And secondly is, we may not have had enough actions laid out to get us to achieve the desired outcome. If that's the case, we enter step 5. Step 5 is, we may need to modify our actions. Take new initiatives to complete the action steps that are behind schedule, And secondly, we may need to reprioritize some steps as necessary to contemplate for the incompleted actions or for actions that don't yield as much of the outcome as we're desired. If the key milestones that we're trying to achieve are not achieved on time, even though you're taking the action steps, you may need to add additional steps. So we take action, we monitor our progress, we modify our action step or our plan of action, and we keep doing this and going through an iterative process until we get to step 6. Step 6, achieve the results. Now, don't confuse completing the action steps with hitting the target. What is important? It's hitting the target. It's obtaining the results you desire. So stay in that iterative process until you actually achieve the desired outcome. And don't give up on the desired outcome. But when you do hit that desired outcome, it's time to go to the 7th step of the process. Create a new vision. So once you've achieved that vision, that outcome, that desired, what has happened between your current reality and the desired outcome? Well, it was just as I showed earlier. They're on top of each other. Your current reality is the vision. So in order to create the tension, in order to keep growing, in order to keep moving forward, we've got to create a new vision. And I'll give you an example of this in a little while, okay? But the 7th step of the process is to create that new vision. Without it, there's no discrepancy from where you're at. Now, I appreciate Bill Brandt providing me permission to share the 7-step process. As a matter of fact, it's shared and it's a process that I cover in my book, The Power of Living by Design. And Bill was so great because he's all about helping others that he let me put that in my book before his book called Compass, Creating Exceptional Organizations, came out. Now, in his book, he shared a pretty unique way of using, or a pretty unique example of the 7-step process I'd like to share with you before I share how I first used it. It seemed that Bill was in Africa helping a community there by teaching the 7-step process. And after he'd gone through the theory, kind of like we did, he then said, now sit down with a partner and work through the 7 steps, and I'll walk around and coach you as I go. Well, he passes by one table and he hears someone say, and I'll get a husband. And he goes, oh, that's interesting. So he asks the question, so your vision is to get a husband, a spouse? And she goes, oh no, that's my action step. He goes, well, what's your vision? Well, my vision is to own a car. He goes, well, what do you mean? Well, see, my action step is I'll get a husband, and my husband will buy me a car. He goes, okay, that's a bit of an unusual action step, but I see where you're going. I see how your vision is to have a car. In order to relieve that vision, to get a husband to buy you a car. Okay, you're using the process okay. Now, the funny part is, after that work session, Bill was in a cafe and he noticed the young lady walk into the cafe with a handsome young man, and they were laughing and cheerful and having a good time. And Bill thought, I wonder. So as he was leaving, the young lady noticed Bill and said, oh, Mr. Brandt. And so Bill came over and chatted with her, and he leaned down and whispered into her ear, so are you taking your action step? And she smiled and laughed and said, oh, no. So, Bill finished his visit and came back a few months later and to follow up and work with the group that he'd been working with, and the young lady wasn't in the group. her accountability partner, the person that she was working through the steps, was there and caught Bill's attention and said, "Oh, she wants to tell you something." And after class, the young lady came in and says, "I got the car and I married my husband too." And sure enough, her plan, her 7-step process worked. Now, I wouldn't suggest that's the only way to use the 7-step process, but you see what it did. She created a vision, she recognized her current reality, she took an action step, and it so happened she obtained her desired outcome. When I joined Bill's company, the first week you're there, you're trained on the 7-step process and other processes that his company used. And you were asked to sit down just like the young lady did and lay out a 7-step process for yourself. Well, as a lot of you all know, I love to play golf. So I decided to use it on my golf game. What was my desired vision? What did I want? Well, I wanted to become a 3 handicap. My current reality at the time was I was about a 6 or a 7 handicap. There was a difference between my desired and my current reality. If you will, there was a discrepancy between the two. To relieve the tension, the first action step I was going to take was take a lesson. And I did. And I improved a little bit. But what I found was I really had to use that knowledge through proper practice before it improved my outcome. And so I did. I set up a schedule of going out and practicing a little bit, and then kept monitoring my performance. Every other week back then, a new handicap would come. Well, that first step helped me move from about a 6 or a 7 handicap down to a 4. But I hadn't achieved my results. So I needed to do something else. The next step was to improve my putting. I came to find out that I was an okay putter, but not a great putter. So I started practicing more on the short game, not just putting, but chipping. And over time and practice and improved skill with the chipping and putting, I achieved that handicap of 3.0. So why don't you do the same thing Bill asked the young lady to do, and the same thing I needed to do that first week at American Woodmark? Take the 7-step process. There'll be a download that defines each of the 7 steps. And for yourself, identify a vision, a goal that you've got, if you will. Define your current reality. Feel the tension, feel the discrepancy between the two. Define an action plan. Monitor the impact of the action plan. Modify the plan if you need to until you achieve the desired result. Step number 6. Don't forget though, step number 7 is defining that new vision. And I defined my new vision too. My new vision was I wanted to become a 1 handicap. So I had to identify a new plan to get there. I did it, and so can you. Enjoy the exercise.